Um, I would like to call to order the Window-Waymouth School District Board of Directors meeting. It is April 22nd, 2020. We are doing the Zoom video conferencing. Mr. Howell?
Kate Bricks,
Present.
Jenny Butler,
Here.
Janie Cummings,
Here.
Marge Gavoni,
Here.
Pete Hensler,
Here.
Anna Keeney,
Here.
Kate Levier,
Here.
Scott McLean,
Here.
Christina Small,
Here.
and Molly Cochran.
Here.
Okay. Will you all mute yourselves and then stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for doing that, Molly. That was great. Okay. Mr. Howell, are there any adjustments to the agenda?
There aren't any adjustments to the agenda tonight.
Okay. Then this is the time for public input, an opportunity for the public to comment on items not on the agenda. Anybody has anything to, this person who is on our screen right now, would you like to speak?
I'm all set.
All right, thank you. That's great. Okay, now we'll talk about the last day of school for our current year. Could I have a vote, please? Could I have a motion, please? I apologize. I call on Pete to give us the motion, if you would.
I don't have the agenda printed out.
Oh, okay. So the motion, all right,
Want me to do it?
sure.
Okay. I move to update the calendar for the conclusion of the school year to June 11th, 2020 for student distance learning and June 18th, 2020 for RSU 14 staff.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any public comment? Any board discussion?
Did we, and I don't even know if this is a possibility at all, have we considered the option of even earlier than that?
If you want me to answer that, I can.
I'll take an answer. That works.
I wasn't. The end of distance learning across the state has been varying greatly. Mm-hmm. And I've actually observed dates anywhere from May 29th to some schools on the mid-coast to, I think I read Augusta last night is going to be on June 5th. The date that we have here is closely matches what's happening with Cumberland County. It also matches with the required hours and days that our students for our vocational region need to be getting in because they are also doing distance learning for their certificate programs. And it's really was our last scheduled day.
I'll support whatever we decide as a board. I'm just concerned that as this continues and we get deeper into this and good weather starts to come, the ability to keep kids engaged, I think is going to drastically reduce and be really tough on some families and teachers too.
Anybody else have a comment? Marge?
Chris, PATHS in Westbrook, is that for both of those schools? Is that the final day?
Right now, it's a similar end date, Marge. I don't have the exact date. And kind of speaking in our Cumberland County group, this was ending to a pretty similar date to where they needed to have kids finishing up for, again, their certificate programs.
Okay.
There's been different components that I've read in different people's plans. Some have ended distance learning for all that first week of June and then left another week for students as a catch-up week and then had their staff go an additional week. Districts in our area are pretty similar to this calendar again, but I think as you go across the state, you're going to see different things. In addition, I think you're also going to see different levels of service that have been provided by districts to their learners through distance learning.
Janie, can I ask one more
Sure.
question? And this has really nothing to do with the last day, but it brings up the point. I'm really curious how our students that go to those two schools are getting their grades, because a lot of the stuff they do is hands-on. You know, I mean, I don't know how you're at home working on a car or doing electrical or HVAC or that.
I can give, but Kate, if you want to.
Yeah. Oh, no, I don't want to speak either for Chris too, but I am part of a state board of education committee for career and technical education, and this conversation has come up, and a lot of them have talked about how a lot of online resources have opened up. There's even students can even get their welding certificate online, so there actually is a lot of distance learning that has opened up for them.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. I was curious about that.
And I can speak to someone in the food service or whatever program. They have to make dinner for their family every night.
Oh, can they come to my house? Thank you.
Okay, are we all set to vote? All right. It will be a roll call vote. All those in favor of the last day of school being June 11th.
Marge, oh, sorry. I'm going to have to call the vote.
Right.
Marge Gavoni,
Yes.
Christina Small,
Yes.
Jenny Butler,
Yes.
Anna Keeney,
Yes.
Kate Levier,
Yes.
Scott McLean,
Yes.
Kate Bricks,
Yes.
Jenny Cummings,
Yes.
Pete Hensler.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. The motion carries. Now we'll have some information from our wonderful Jeannie Riley and the school nutrition program.
So if I can, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you, Jeannie. Oh, you're muted. There you go.
How's that?
Perfect.
All right. So I'll give you a brief update about what we have been doing. When we closed schools on the 16th of March, just on that workshop day prior to that, Ryan and I attended a webinar from the Maine DOE for school nutrition directors that kind of laid out, different options. And at that point in time, there weren't a lot of options for our district as far as serving reimbursable meals to our students, because we don't have enough free and reduced families in our district. None of the meals that we would have been serving would have been reimbursable at all at that time, because there had been no waivers or anything like that. Ryan and I felt we felt like we needed to get a plan in place. Something had to happen. We needed to have a plan to feed our students. So we thought, well, we have this great backpack program. Why don't we start serving families pantry style meals, not necessarily lunches, not sandwiches, but food to go, milk and yogurt and cheese and fruits and vegetables and cereal and things like that, to take home, and using our backpack funds to purchase. Although initially a lot of the food that we were sending home with families was food that we already had on hand in our storerooms, in our walk-ins, food that was kind of ready to go those first 2 weeks of school. So that's what we did, and that's what we have been doing. We are currently still operating off of the National School Lunch Program, and that means that we are not serving reimbursable meals. That also means that we're not getting any reimbursement from USDA for any of what we're doing. We continue to provide about three bags of food, milk, a bag of milk and dairy products, a bag of what we call pantry foods, peanut butter, pasta, sauce, tuna fish, things like that, cereal, oatmeal, things like that, dry goods that could be stored in someone's pantry. And then a bag of fruits and vegetables, and sometimes 2 bags kind of put into one, but enough to get them through from one pickup day on Tuesdays to Friday, and then Friday to Tuesday. So when families come, we're giving them about $20 to $25 worth of food each time. And right now we're just serving about 150 families at pickup each time. So maybe about 30 in Raymond and 120 to 125 in Wyndham Middle School every Tuesday and then every Friday. So right now it's about 300 families per week. I believe that, you know, although the costs aren't, we believe that the costs are about $6,000 or $20 to $25 per pickup, or about $6,000 a week. Although a lot of the food, especially in the first 2 weeks, would have been food that we would have thrown away when we stopped serving kids. The milk that we were giving to families, the yogurt, a lot of the fruits and vegetables that we handed out to families on those, especially in those first 2 weeks, would have been lost if we didn't have some means of giving it away to families. So families seem to be really appreciative of the model that we're using. And we've also been doing some videos of healthy ideas, healthy cooking tips of things to do with some of the food that they're getting in their backpack supply. So we had 240 heads of cauliflower donated to us, because one of the things that happened was that when all of this happened, produce vendors had a lot of food kind of in supply chain that no one could take after, you know, when all the restaurants closed and everything. We were the happy recipients of many, many heads of lettuce and many heads of cauliflower. So we decided to make some videos. We have 3, I believe, out there right now. One is to make like peanut butter energy bites, and one is to make buffalo cauliflower. And then we had about 400 heads of lettuce to give away to families. And so Ryan did a video on how to wash a head of lettuce and how to prepare a salad and how to make salad dressing from scratch with some of the oranges that are in the backpacks and things like that. So we're hoping that families will not just take this food and say, this is great, it's food, but also incorporate it into some of their learning and some family time and building some family togetherness and some science and math skills, things like that. So that's what we've been working on. Since March 16th, we've had about $15,800 donated to our backpack program, which is really amazing. Some very amazing donations from all over, small families donating funds that remained in their students' school meal accounts, to $4,000 from the Refuge Church. We have 2 small grants from Full Plates, Full Potential, and that's a rotating grant program. We've applied you can apply every 2 weeks for up to $1,000. So we've applied for that every 2 weeks and received some money from Full Plates, Full Potential as well. We've applied for another large grant from No Kid Hungry. Very limited schools were asked to apply, or you had to kind of pre-apply and then you were invited to apply, and we applied for a $50,000 grant from No Kid Hungry, and we're still waiting to hear about that grant. So that's kind of where things are at as far as what we are doing now. As far as meals, we're gonna lose a lot of revenue. I'm sure you're all aware of that. About 155,000 meals that we would not be serving. And that translates to between lost revenue from meals, families paying, or USDA payment, like reimbursement, and what we sell a la carte, it's probably about $550,000 that will be revenue not coming into our program. On the flip side of that, we're not purchasing any food. The food that we're purchasing is all coming out of our backpack fund. So that's kind of where we're at. I know Chris has thought a lot about that too. It's just,
I'm going to go ahead and jump in here.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that that Jeannie just shared with you is that we are expecting a revenue shortfall of somewhere between $550,000 and $600,000 from lost sales, lost food sales, and lost reimbursements during the shutdown. And I know I've had an opportunity to talk with board members privately or individually, but I also thought it would be important for the public to know because during this time of shutdown, while the district is seeing savings and things like substitute lines and motor fuels, and even some energy savings with not having the volume of electricity and heating fuels used, a $600,000 revenue shortfall is not anything that we predicted. And so it is something that's going to need to be paid for out of other savings in other places. And so board members think about, typically you are transferring anywhere between $30,000 and $80,000 to the food service program to make sure that that program remains solvent, make sure that it ends the year with a zero balance. This year, you're going to have to be making a very, very significant transfer depending upon where we land in order to be able to cover that shortfall. So I think it's important for community members that, yes, we are seeing some savings in some areas because of the shutdown, but then we're also seeing some unexpected revenue losses. And just in addition, I think, just kind of important for this conversation is that by order of the governor, by her executive order, then all of our hourly employees continue to remain employed as all of our salary employees during the course of the shutdown. So while we're able to find some things for Jeannie's food service individuals to do, it's definitely not the volume of work, but we continue to keep them on the payroll and continue to keep them employed during this time. So we don't have the ability to furlough individuals or to have any savings that's netted through that.
I'm certainly here to answer any questions if you guys have questions or thoughts about how to proceed.
I just want to say I'm thankful for all the food that you're able to hand out to people in need, and I appreciate that. And
thank you. We've been using our staff in rotating basis, and it's been really, there's been some, silver linings of just watching teams work in groupings that they don't normally work in, and interacting with staff that they don't normally work with, and seeing families in a different way. That's been, while there's not a lot that's good about this, there have been some silver linings, and just families reaching out and really being grateful for the food. In the very beginning, families, when we would drop off the food, because we're not only having open for pickup, but we're also doing upwards of 50 deliveries each time, each Tuesday and each Friday. And it was kind of Uber Eats style, just kind of dropping the food on a doorstep. But that was back when it was quite cold, although it's quite cold today. Dropping it on their doorstep and then texting the family and saying there's food on your doorstep. And the moms or the dads would text us back and say, oh my goodness, my child was, you can't even imagine the joy that little cartons of milk brought them. Just something normal back in their day that was gone. And it really was quite gratifying to at least be able to provide that.
it's wonderful. And I'm thrilled the way the books are tied into that, and the book giving out the books is tied into that. That's really terrific. So anyone else? Marge?
Yeah, Jeannie. And I think I told you you've probably seen them already. And Kate and I, on the Age Friendly thing, have been doing the Get Well calls to seniors. And there were a couple of seniors that I told about the program because they're raising their grandchildren. Mm-hmm. So they weren't aware of it, and one of them I called today for her regular thing, and she was like thrilled. She was totally so excited because her grandson, because the familiarity, he loved the small cartons of milk, you know, stuff that they're used to seeing when they go to school. And she couldn't be more, I mean, she was just beside herself. She was so grateful, you know. So it's a great thing, and I'm glad that we're able to do it. But thanks, Jeannie.
You're welcome.
Chris, at what point, what's the process? I mean, at what point do we know when we have a final net figure, and then what's the process that you envision to rectify this?
So we should, well, by June 11th, when we finally have closed out, and Stacy's done some work with Jack to look at our final employee costs as we work our way through. When we get closer to that number, we'll need to do a budget transfer, and we'll work with Bill Stockmeyer on a motion in order to be able to do those transfers to, because it looks like we'll need to do it out of different accounts and different cost center areas in order to be able to finalize that number. So I would see us sometime in June as we're closing out the year to be making those transfers and looking to make ourselves whole as we head into the summer and summer audit.
Kate?
Is the program that Jeannie is running right now, will that end when school ends?
Yeah, when June 11th hits, that would be the last week that we'll continue to serve students. We'll need to reach out, and actually, Marge, I'm thinking the group that was started to look at homelessness, which is looking at all the different social services that are provided in both communities, brainstorming ways that the community can continue to be supported beyond that June 11th date. It's still unclear whether or not the summer backpack program, what's going to happen at Dundee, if Dundee will actually be open this summer in order to be able to take and start that program.
Marge?
On that note, Chris, I've talked to Linda about that, and Jeannie's aware of it. Her feel as of right now, and this is Linda at Parks and Recs, is that Dundee will be open this summer, but they're not sure what the circumstances will be. They're not sure if there'll be limited access, which would kind of make it difficult for the summer lunch program because there's people that go there that are not part of that. So Jeannie and I had just a very brief conversation on that, and it's probably kind of early to hear anything from anybody on it yet, but it would be nice if we could get a waiver that would allow us to, and part of that program is you have to eat the food on site, but if we could get a waiver where we could distribute the food, because that's a federal program, so it would be no cost to the district. So I guess unless Jeannie's heard more, so I think we're still waiting on that one.
I think we're still waiting on finding out. The state at the DOE level doesn't really know what waivers will be extended into summer. Right now, congregate feeding is waived so that no one is eating in a congregate manner right now for school meals or anything. They just don't know if they're going to continue with that this summer. If they waived congregate feeding, our site could be moved as long as Westbrook would consider still sending meals up. If not, then we need to look at what that would look like. That would be a budgetary decision, because then it is not at no cost to the district. But if we were providing the meals, there would actually be cost to the district. It's really up to Westbrook and what waivers exist, I guess, at this point.
Kate?
So after the last day of school, or the last official food distribution from the district, we would no longer have the personnel, because we wouldn't be paying them, to move beyond that. So I guess, and I think I definitely agree that there needs to be a community effort in both communities to have a plan in place and that we communicate that plan, because my assumption is this is a real blessing for a lot of families, and then come June 11th, it's going to end, and hopefully there'll be something in place, but I don't want people to be shocked or actually mad at us when it's out of our hands that we're no longer distributing food. So I know we do a good job of communicating this, and I'm hoping that moving forward, we'll have a plan in place so that everybody who's involved knows what's going on.
Marge?
Chris, back to your comment, and it was really funny. I was just thinking of that earlier today. And I don't know if we can do it on a Zoom meeting. There's quite a few people on that, but it's probably better that way because we can see each other. But that would bring the district and the town. We could set that meeting up and have it as to one, because it was originally set up for the homeless. Okay, what's going on with them? Although I haven't seen panhandlers or anything, but I'm sure they're still out there somewhere. And what are we going to do about all of the families when we stop feeding them, we as a district? And we can't count on the summer lunch program, because even that is going to be really limited as to what that's going to do. The other thing is, and we'll bring it up at our meeting, is I think we have to get a lot of folks who are not used to going to the food pantry. I think we're going to have to probably raise the visibility of that existing. And right now what the food pantry's doing, and Kate's aware of it because we're on that group, is for seniors, they can basically put a food order in with Lynn at Parks and Recs, and for whatever's at the pantry, and then she will go down and she picks it up and she delivers it. So I think what's going to happen is, I think the bulk of what's going on is going to be moved to the food pantry now, and I don't know how well they're going to be able to handle that, but that's something we'll have to discuss, Chris, when we get together with the other group, and we'll have to do that soon.
Okay, we all set? Thank you very much for coming tonight, Jeannie.
You're welcome.
Thanks
I
for
think what we're doing feels right. It feels like families feel appreciative, and we feel like we're educating kids about food at the same time as providing food. But I know it's not sustainable, and we at some point we'll have to regroup and rethink our plan, but for now it's good.
Thanks again.
You're welcome.
Okay, next is an opportunity for the public to comment on the budget. And if you would like to comment on the budget, there are a lot of people who, Mr. Howell just unmuted you, okay. So if anyone would like to comment on the budget, I'm not really sure how to go about this, but I can call on your phone number, and if you would like to, there you go. There's somebody, 8379. Would you like to comment?
Hi, Janny. This is Becca Cole. I just want to give all of you a shout out for all of your hard work, and just know that the needs of our school community are going to be more important this year than perhaps we've ever seen, and I appreciate the support that the public can offer for passing this budget.
Thank you. That's great. Thanks. Okay, would anyone else like to speak? Rebecca, are you wanting to speak again?
No, I'm on my phone, of course, so I'm not sure how to mute myself again.
That's fine. Okay. I guess no one else would like to speak. So, well, thank you. It's now time for the board, unless anybody else wants to comment, it's time for the board to discuss the budget. Mr. Howell had some things that he wanted to tell us.
Let me go ahead and unmute myself. I know the board has spent a considerable amount of time on the budget, and one of the things that we have spent our greatest amount of time on is the expense side. But where we have not had the opportunity for just some public education, I guess is the best way to put it, is on the revenue side, because obviously we're a balanced budget. We need to be bringing in as much revenue as we are in expenditures. And so I'm just going to share my screen just for one quick minute and show. And let's go here. And of course, it's going to load slow. I hit the wrong button, sorry. Let's go to present instead. So just this is really in kind of that vein of the revenue and where does our revenue come from. So we have a required essential programs and services contribution. So the state says, based upon a school district of your size with this perceived wealth, 44% roughly of your budget is required that you locally have to raise through taxes in order to receive your state subsidy. So 44% is that required contribution. We roughly receive about 31% of our revenue through state subsidy. We receive an additional 22% through what's called local additional. And this is money that the district raises over essential programs and services. This covers programs and activities that are not covered within in EPS. We also have additional revenue. I'm going to jump down to the bottom there, which is rentals through extra food service things, things that we might actually be able to just gain through gate receipts, a little bit of additional revenue. And then there's this carryover portion, which represents 1.7% of our overall revenue. And you can think of carryover as this, is that carryover is almost like dipping into your savings account as a district as to what is the dollar amount that you're going to go ahead and you're going to then contribute to offset taxes. And during the time that I know I've been working at the district level since 2004, the carryover amount has ranged anywhere from $450,000, so $450,000 taking out of available funds, to as high as 1.2 million that I think was 2 years ago for the budget, that was then put as additional revenue to help offset taxation. And so when finance had the opportunity to meet and go over this year's budget, we looked at a $900,000 carryover that would then be used as additional revenue that would then be used to offset taxation and to help support this budget. And so if you think about at the end of the year for you as a board, you have a couple things that you take a look at. One is you look at what that carryover number will be at. And then in addition, you will take a look at, is there any additional funds that are not expended throughout the year that you then vote to send to the public for capital projects. And those capital projects can range anywhere from, I think you've done as low as 400,000 in capital projects. So paying for a roof, buying a boiler, doing siding upgrades, to as high as 900,000. And so as we look to carry over and as we look this year, Stacy does a wonderful job of tracking where we are budget-wise. Last time I checked, we were actually running a little bit behind carryover, but that was also with $600,000 of a revenue shortfall for food service that was put in as well. And so this year, finance made the recommendation at our last meeting to move forward with a $900,000 carryover, or $900,000 of unexpended funds to be transferred from the RSU to offset taxation. So it's not really a discussion we've had a chance to share publicly, and for everyone to know that that is a component of the revenue side of our budget.
Anybody have a question or a comment? Christina.
You said that excess money at the end of the year generally goes to capital projects, but when do we have the opportunity to add into the this fund?
So for the capital projects fund or for carryover?
No, for carryover. When do we put money into carryover?
Carryover would be money that would just be left over at the end of the year. So we would take a look at where we're tracking for spending, and we would then commit from past year's funds because the audit's not finalized till the end of August. We would commit from past year's funds and then say that $900,000 out of past year's funds are going to be committed to this. Is that helpful?
I guess I thought you said that money went to capital projects.
No, we either goes to I'm going to back up a little bit. I'm going to give you a little longer explanation. State of Maine currently only allows you to carry over 3% in cash from your budget. And so any money that's left over, we can commit to putting it towards carryover, or we can also commit and have the public vote to do capital projects, which would be, again, voting to do maybe a new roof, maybe voting to do a boiler. That requires public approval because it's recommitting the funds that the community once at one time approved. So that actually has to go to our public budget meeting for a vote.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Pete?
All right, so as I'm thinking about this more since we met as a finance committee meeting, I'm just wondering, so we're putting 900,000 towards taxation, 600,000, which would normally be savings or unspent funds during the school year that would go into that unfunded balance, is now going to be basically used to offset the nutrition costs. So we're not going to be having as much end of year savings as we typically would or have been experiencing recently. So have we taken a look and see what that's going to do in terms of projections towards our unfunded balance? Typically we try to leave it pretty level.
Yeah, I think Pete, what it's ultimately going to impact is what we could possibly do for capital projects at the end of the year and for what recommendations that we can do with that. Because ultimately, if it's going to food service or if it's going to carryover, then what you have limited for funds left over at the end of the year isn't going to provide the same level of funding for capital projects that maybe you as a board have been able to do in the past. We'll have a better handle probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks as far as where we're going to land on for some final numbers. But ultimately it's going to impact again that level, that project level, which the one silver lining in all this, you always got to look for something good. The $2.5 million that the district received in revolving renovation funds, some of those projects may have been committed through capital in order to get those projects done. So being able to have now another funding source to be able to tackle some of those things, we actually might be okay if we can't commit the same level that we've committed in the past.
Marge, you had your hand up.
I did, but I think you half answered it for me, and it was on the revolving renovation. With all of the reallocation of money up in Augusta, is that still on track to happen? The amount of money, the approvals and everything?
Yeah, we've received we've done our loan application, which was completed prior to the closure. We received documents from the Maine Bond Bank the end of last week. And so those funds are set. I don't see any reason why that they're going to change, especially now that we've completed our loan paperwork moving forward with that. The one thing that it might do, Marge, is we're all kind of guessing it may impact major school construction at the state level, and whether or not they have funds to fully fund, we'll have to wait and see on that. May move our middle school project back a little bit.
That's all right. We're used to waiting. Thanks.
Anyone else? All right. So I guess we need to be thinking now if we can all support this budget. And if you have any last comments or anything you want to share, because our next meeting, the meeting in May, first meeting in May, is when we vote. It tentatively is when we're going to vote, unless we have some other information that comes our way. So I'm looking for head nods if you think you can support this budget. Okay. Getting head nods from people. Thank you. We'll be voting next, our next official meeting, which is May 6th. So now it's time for the superintendent's report.
So we are officially right now on April break, and I'd like to thank Molly this is actually Molly's vacation, and for joining us tonight in order to be able to spend some time on this break. One of the things that was in my final message to staff last Friday was to make sure that, given the amount of extra screen time that everyone's been experiencing, to sign off from their email, to sign off from their videos, and again, to kind of slow down a little bit. And some have heeded that. Others, I can tell, are still working throughout their vacation, continuing on with the sense of normalcy that is now our video normalcy. So just some latest updates from Pender and the commissioner. One of the things that the superintendents have been asking for is a roadmap or some guidelines for how do we've closed schools, but how do we go ahead and how do we then set a timeline for reopening? And so really just wanted to share that one of the things that we've asked DOE to do is to come up with some statewide guidelines for what are the markers, what are the things that we need to take a look at that would then say, you know what, it's okay now and it's safe to reopen schools, to make sure that we can come back safely in the fall. Along with that, one of the things, and I think it's probably the most frequent conversation that I have with parents that I run across, is the level of support that students are going to need when they come back. And so not just the academic supports that are required, but also the social emotional supports, the reconnections, and the work that we're going to need to do for that, not only for our students, but also for our staff. So that's really become now a statewide conversation. How do we do this and how do we do it well as a community? So, and Anna hit it right, when we come back on April 27th, we will still have 5.5 weeks of distance learning. And, we'll do our best to continue to support students and to support staff and to support families, providing the distance education until we close out schools for the summer. So happy April vacation to everyone who's listening tonight.
Especially to Molly.
Yeah. Okay,
It's now time for adjournment. And we haven't had any time when we've had a discussion about things that we're doing or things, because there are no meetings. So, so it's time for adjournment. Who would like to do the motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Thanks, Scott. It's been moved. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Marge?
Yes.
Kate Levier?
Yes.
Kate Bricks?
Yes.
Jenny Cummings?
Yes.
Jenny Butler?
Yes.
Pete Hensler?
Aye.
Scott McLean?
Yep.
And Christina Small.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
support
Anna,
it
sorry.
too.
You were my last box.
Okay, we're adjourned. And Pete, if when we stop recording.